Imagine standing in a spot where gravity pulls objects uphill instead of down. These aren't fiction. They're real places you can visit that defy scientific explanation. From mysterious vortexes to eternal flames, our planet hides 15 locations that shouldn't logically exist. The strangest one might be just a plane ride away from where you're sitting right now. Let's begin with the Bermuda Triangle. This stretch of ocean between Florida, Puerto Rico, and Bermuda has puzzled experts for decades. Ships and planes seem to vanish here without leaving any wreckage behind. Even the rescue teams sent to find them sometimes disappear. The mystery started in 1945 when 5 Navy planes vanished during a training mission. The search plane sent to find them also disappeared. In total, over 50 ships and 20 planes have vanished in the triangle since then. No bodies, no distress calls, nothing. Scientists have proposed several theories. Some point to sudden powerful storms that form in the area without warning. Others blame massive methane gas bubbles that rise from the ocean floor, reducing water density enough to sink ships instantly. Another theory suggests unusual magnetic properties that mess with navigation equipment. What makes the Bermuda Triangle truly baffling is how some vessels reappear years later, completely abandoned but in perfect condition. The SS Cotopaxi disappeared in 1925 and was discovered floating without a crew 95 years later. The instruments still worked, food remained on plates, and personal items were untouched. The US Navy and Coast Guard officially don't recognize the Bermuda Triangle as an especially dangerous area. They point out that considering the heavy traffic in this shipping lane, the number of disappearances isn't statistically unusual. But this explanation doesn't account for the strange circumstances surrounding many cases. What if there's something more to this mystery? Some researchers point to unusual electronic fog that appears in the area, creating conditions where pilots report their instruments going haywire and time seeming to speed up or slow down. Is it possible that this region contains some kind of portal or disruption in space-time? The question remains unanswered. Now, let's move on to the Gate to Hell in Turkmenistan. In the middle of the Karakum Desert sits a fiery crater that's been burning continuously since 1971. Locals call it the Door to Hell, and one look explains why. This 230-foot wide crater burns with hundreds of flames, reaching temperatures of over 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit. The story behind this inferno is almost as incredible as the site itself. Soviet scientists were drilling for natural gas when their equipment suddenly broke through into a massive underground cavern. The ground collapsed, taking their drilling rig with it. Fearing the release of poisonous methane gas, scientists decided to light it on fire, expecting it to burn out in a few weeks. That was over 50 years ago. What makes this site scientifically puzzling is its longevity. The gas should have burned out decades ago based on typical reserve estimates. Yet the flames show no signs of weakening. Some geologists believe this indicates the presence of a gas field far larger than previously thought, possibly connected to deeper reserves through underground channels that shouldn't naturally exist. In 2013, explorer George Kourounis became the first person to descend into the crater. Wearing a heat-resistant suit and breathing apparatus, he collected soil samples from the bottom. What he found defied expectations. Bacteria were living in this extreme environment, species that shouldn't be able to survive such heat and toxic gases. The Darvaza crater has become an unlikely tourist destination. Visitors travel for hours through the desert to witness this otherworldly sight. Especially impressive at night when the glow can be seen for miles. The government has considered extinguishing the flames to increase gas exports, but attempts to cap it have failed. Perhaps most interesting is what the crater teaches us about the possibility of life on other planets. If microorganisms can adapt to these extreme conditions, similar life forms might exist in harsh environments elsewhere in our solar system. This impossible place might hold keys to answering one of our biggest questions. Are we alone in the universe? Salar de Uyuni in Bolivia stretches over 4,000 square miles, making it the world's largest salt flat. During the rainy season, a thin layer of water transforms this vast white expanse into the world's largest mirror, creating an optical illusion so perfect that the horizon disappears completely. The reflection is so flawless that NASA uses it to calibrate satellite orbits. This salt flat formed when prehistoric Lake Minchin dried up around 40,000 years ago, leaving behind a salt crust up to 10 feet thick. Below this crust lies an estimated 10 billion tons of salt and the world's largest lithium reserve, about 70% of the planet's supply. This rare metal is crucial for batteries that power everything from smartphones to electric cars. What makes Salar de Uyuni scientifically unusual is its extraordinary flatness. The entire surface varies less than 1 meter in elevation across its massive expanse, making it one of the flattest places on Earth. This extreme flatness, combined with the high altitude and clear air, creates optical phenomena that distort perception of distance and size, making it impossible for visitors to judge how far away objects actually are. The salt flat sits at an elevation of 11,995 feet, where the air contains 20% less oxygen than at sea level. At this altitude, the atmosphere filters less UV radiation, creating unusually pure sunlight. The combination of thin air, intense sunlight, and the reflective surface produces lighting conditions that exist nowhere else on the planet, creating photographs that appear digitally enhanced but are actually unedited. During the dry season, the salt crystallizes into perfectly hexagonal patterns that stretch to the horizon. These natural formations shouldn't exist on such a massive scale. Hexagonal patterns typically form at microscopic levels in nature, not across thousands of square miles. Scientists believe the precise hexagons result from the slow, uniform evaporation process and the mineral composition that allows for this remarkable geometric precision. Beneath the salt crust lies another mystery, a massive prehistoric fossilized coral reef. Finding coral at nearly 12,000 feet above sea level defies conventional understanding of geological uplift rates. This suggests the Andes Mountains rose far more rapidly than scientific models predicted, challenging our understanding of tectonic movements and forcing geologists to reconsider mountain formation theories. Lake Hillier in Australia captivates visitors with its vibrant bubblegum pink water that contrasts dramatically with the blue ocean just a few meters away. What makes this lake truly baffling is that, unlike other colored lakes that change with temperature, Lake Hillier remains consistently pink year-round, regardless of weather conditions or water temperature. Scientists initially suspected the color came from algae containing red pigments, similar to other pink lakes. However, Lake Hillier's pink persists even when water is removed and stored in containers, something that doesn't happen with algae-colored water, which typically fades when separated from its environment. This suggests a fundamentally different mechanism is at work. The lake's extreme salinity, about 10 times saltier than the ocean, creates conditions where conventional life shouldn't thrive. Yet researchers discovered a complex ecosystem of salt-loving microorganisms, including a previously unknown species of bacteria that produces pink carotenoid pigments as protection from the harsh sun. These organisms have developed unique metabolic pathways not seen elsewhere in nature. What puzzles scientists most is the lake's isolation. Despite being separated from the ocean by just a narrow strip of land, the pink water never mixes with the blue, nor does its color leak into surrounding soil. The lake maintains a perfect ecosystem balance that self-regulates its pink hue despite changing external conditions, rainfall, and evaporation. A closed system that seemingly defies the second law of thermodynamics. Swimming in Lake Hillier is perfectly safe, though rarely permitted due to conservation efforts. The water feels oily and extremely buoyant due to its salt content, and swimmers emerge coated in salt crystals, but without the pink color staining their skin. This indicates the pigment bonds with specific elements in the water rather than functioning as a traditional dye, challenging chemical understanding of how natural pigments behave. In 2016, a research team discovered that Lake Hillier contains organisms with unique properties that might revolutionize medical science. These extremophiles produce compounds with potential applications in creating biodegradable plastics, new antibiotics, and cancer-fighting drugs. This impossible pink lake might hold solutions to some of humanity's most pressing problems. Mount Roraima rises dramatically from the rainforests of South America, straddling the borders of Venezuela, Brazil, and Guyana. This flat-topped mountain, or tepwe, features sheer 1,300-foot cliffs on all sides, creating an isolated plateau that's remained cut off from the surrounding landscape for over 2 million years. From a distance, it appears as if someone sliced the top off a mountain with supernatural precision. Geologists struggle to explain how such a perfectly flat summit formed naturally. The mountain consists of some of Earth's oldest rock formations, dating back 1.8 billion years, and should have eroded into a traditional peak shape. Instead, this 12-square-mile tabletop stands in defiance of normal weathering patterns, with its distinct rectangular outline visible from space. The isolation of Roraima's summit created what scientists call an island in the sky, an evolutionary laboratory where species developed independently from their relatives below. Researchers have documented over 50 plant species found nowhere else on Earth, including carnivorous plants that evolved unique trapping mechanisms. These plants shouldn't exist according to conventional adaptive radiation theories, as the limited space shouldn't support such diverse speciation. Perhaps most puzzling is the network of quartz crystals that runs throughout the mountain. These crystals sometimes emit low electrical pulses that disrupt compass readings and occasionally cause small static discharges during storms. Local indigenous people have long claimed the mountain thinks and speaks through these electrical phenomena, and recent scientific measurements have confirmed unusual electromagnetic activity that has no clear geological explanation. The summit features bizarre rock formations that appear almost engineered, perfectly balanced stones, symmetrical hollows, and rock arches that form natural bridges. Black rocks, known as lapis equatorializare, are scattered across the plateau, containing metallic elements in proportions not found in surrounding geology. These rocks have unusual thermal properties, staying warmer than the ambient temperature even during cold nights. Roraima's weather defies prediction, generating its own microclimate that can transition from clear skies to dense fog to heavy rainfall within minutes. The mountain frequently remains shrouded in clouds while surrounding areas are clear. This atmospheric phenomenon, combined with its unique appearance, inspired Arthur Conan Doyle's The Lost World and the floating mountains in the film Avatar, fiction inspired by a reality that seems equally fantastical. The moving rocks of Death Valley present one of geology's most enduring puzzles. In a remote corner of Death Valley National Park lies a dry lake bed called Racetrack Playa, where hundreds of rocks, some weighing up to 700 pounds, move across the desert floor, leaving long trails behind them. Yet no one had ever witnessed them in motion until recently. For nearly a century, scientists proposed theories ranging from powerful winds to magnetic forces to explain the phenomenon. The mystery deepened when researchers noticed that neighboring rocks sometimes traveled in parallel, then suddenly changed direction together, while other rocks nearby didn't move at all. This selective movement pattern seemed to rule out any single force affecting the entire area. In 2014, scientists Richard and Jim Norris finally captured the rocks moving using time-lapse photography and GPS tracking. They discovered that during winter, rain creates a shallow layer of water on the playa that freezes overnight into thin sheets of ice. When morning sun causes the ice to break up and light winds begin to blow, these large ice panels push the rocks across the slick mud, sometimes at speeds of reaching 15 feet per minute. What makes this explanation still scientifically challenging is the precise combination of rare conditions required. Enough water to create flooding, but not so much that the surface becomes too muddy. Temperatures cold enough for freezing, but not so cold that the ice becomes too thick. And winds strong enough to move ice sheets, but not strong enough to break them apart. These conditions occur perhaps once every 2 to 3 years. The rock trails themselves present another enigma. Some trails form perfect straight lines extending hundreds of feet, while others create zigzags or circular patterns. Occasionally, rocks will move side by side for a distance, then diverge suddenly, as if making a conscious decision to part ways. The variability in these patterns suggests factors beyond simple wind and ice mechanics, possibly including subtle variations in ground friction or ice thickness, too small to measure. Perhaps most remarkable is that this phenomenon only occurs in a few places on Earth, despite similar playas existing worldwide. Death Valley's racetrack, along with a few sites in Nevada and South Africa, possess some unique characteristics scientists still haven't fully identified. This suggests our understanding of the interplay between geology, hydrology, and meteorology remains incomplete, with natural forces creating effects that appear to defy physics until we look closely enough. Socotra Island rises from the Arabian Sea like something from another planet. Located 220 miles off Yemen's coast, this isolated island hosts plant species so bizarre that 37% exist nowhere else on Earth. The iconic dragon's blood tree, with its umbrella-shaped canopy and red sap, looks more like science fiction than reality. Its design shouldn't be evolutionarily advantageous, yet has survived for millions of years. What makes Socotra scientifically impossible is its isolation combined with its biodiversity. The island separated from mainland Africa over 6 million years ago, before humans existed. Yet despite its relatively small size, about 1,400 square miles, it contains 3 distinct ecological zones with dramatically different plant communities. According to biogeography principles, islands this size typically support far fewer endemic species. Socotra's cucumber tree defies botanical explanation with its swollen trunk that looks like an elephant's leg topped with a sparse crown of leaves. This design shouldn't compete effectively for sunlight, yet the tree thrives across the island. Scientists discovered these trees store massive amounts of water in their trunks, up to 90% of their mass, allowing them to survive the 4-month drought season. This adaptation exceeds what evolutionary models predict is possible in the given time frame. The island's isolation created the perfect conditions for evolutionary experiments. The desert rose, another Socotran oddity, evolved to become a squat, bulbous succulent that can grow to 10 feet tall with hardly any true leaves. Instead, it developed a massive water-storing trunk with a thin, papery bark that peels away constantly. An adaptation that shouldn't work in high winds, but somehow does. When it flowers, the entire plant explodes with brilliant pink blossoms that attract pollinators from miles away. What puzzles researchers most is how these ancient plants survived the climate changes that have occurred since the island's formation. Socotra has experienced periods of extreme drought and fluctuating sea levels that should have wiped out many species. Yet the island's plants developed adaptations so effective that they've remained essentially unchanged for millions of years, creating what botanists call a living museum of prehistoric flora. Despite its harsh conditions, 8 months of monsoon winds so strong, trees grow sideways, followed by 4 months of intense drought. Socotra supports not just plants, but also 90% endemic reptile species and over 40% endemic bird species. This concentration of unique life forms in such a small, challenging environment, creates what scientists call an evolutionary singularity, a place where the normal rules of natural selection seem suspended, producing life forms that shouldn't exist but undeniably do. Blood Falls in Antarctica emerges from Taylor Glacier like an open wound, staining the pristine white ice with a shocking crimson flow. First discovered in 1911 by geologist Griffith Taylor, this blood-red waterfall was initially thought to be caused by red algae. The truth proved far more extraordinary. The water contains no algae at all, but instead carries iron-rich brine that oxidizes when it contacts air. What makes Blood Falls truly impossible is its origin story. The water flows from an ancient saltwater lake trapped beneath 1,300 feet of ice for at least 1.5 million years, an environment that should be completely sterile. Yet scientists discovered this subglacial lake teems with microbial life, surviving without light or oxygen in water 3 times saltier than seawater and rich in iron and sulfur compounds. These microbes have been isolated from the rest of the biological world since before humans evolved. The water emerges sporadically through a precise crack in the glacier, following a path that defies glacial mechanics. Typically, water pressure would refreeze such cracks, especially in Antarctica's extreme cold. Yet this particular fissure has remained open for thousands of years, allowing the iron-rich water to reach the surface in defiance of both pressure and temperature constraints. Radar studies reveal an intricate network of channels within the glacier that shouldn't naturally form. In 2018, researchers made another startling discovery. The subglacial ecosystem produces heat through chemical reactions, maintaining a liquid water pocket that never freezes, despite being surrounded by ice at temperatures around -17 degrees Celsius or 1.4 degrees Fahrenheit. This natural antifreeze system creates a self-sustaining environment that contradicts conventional understanding of thermodynamics in extreme environments. The microbes living in this bizarre ecosystem have evolved unique metabolic pathways never seen elsewhere on Earth. They survive by breathing iron, converting ferric iron to ferrous iron, a process that releases enough energy to sustain life without photosynthesis or oxygen. These ancient organisms represent one of the most extreme adaptations to isolation ever documented, functioning essentially as living fossils from Earth's distant past. Blood Falls offers scientists a unique opportunity to study how life might exist in similar environments on other planets, particularly Mars and Jupiter's moon Europa, which both have subsurface ice and potential saltwater reserves. NASA researchers now use Blood Falls as a testing ground for technologies designed to detect extraterrestrial life, making this impossible place a gateway to understanding possibilities beyond our world. The Devil's Kettle in Minnesota presents a geological impossibility that continues to baffle scientists. Along the Brule River in Judge C.R. Magny State Park, the river splits around a rock outcropping. While the eastern half continues normally downstream, the western half vanishes completely into a deep pothole in the rock, never to re-emerge. This disappearing water defies basic principles of hydrology. For decades, researchers attempted to trace the water's path by tossing objects into the kettle, including logs, ping pong balls, and GPS trackers, yet nothing ever surfaced downstream. In the 1980s, scientists released dye into the kettle, expecting it to reappear somewhere along the river's course to Lake Superior. The dye never showed up, suggesting the water follows a completely unknown underground path, something that shouldn't be possible through the area's solid rhyolite bedrock. The kettle sits at a geological boundary between ancient volcanic rock and even older basaltic rock from the mid-continent rift that occurred 1.1 billion years ago. This unusual formation created what some geologists believe might be a network of lava tubes, or fault lines, deep underground. However, such structures typically collapse over geological time spans, especially when constantly exposed to flowing water, making the kettle's persistence particularly puzzling. In 2017, hydrologists from Minnesota's Department of Natural Resources conducted a more precise experiment, measuring water volume above and below the falls. They discovered nearly identical flow rates, suggesting the water does rejoin the river downstream, through underwater channels too diffuse to detect with dye. Yet this explanation creates another mystery. If the water returns to the river, why have none of the thousands of objects thrown into the kettle over decades ever resurfaced? Local Ojibwe legends offer another perspective on the Devil's Kettle. According to indigenous stories, the pothole leads to a series of underground chambers where water spirits dwell. These spirits were said to claim objects that entered their domain as offerings. Interestingly, some modern scientific theories propose that the underground path might include a series of siphons and chambers that could indeed trap objects while allowing water to pass. A case where ancient knowledge and modern science find unexpected alignment. What makes the Devil's Kettle truly extraordinary is how it challenges our understanding of water's relationship with rock. Typically, water flowing through rock gradually carves wider channels over time through erosion. Yet the kettle has maintained its same approximate size and flow capacity for hundreds of years, neither expanding through erosion nor becoming blocked with debris. A hydrological equilibrium that shouldn't naturally persist without some as-yet undiscovered mechanism maintaining it. The Oregon Vortex draws visitors seeking to experience a place where the laws of physics appear broken. Located in Gold Hill, Oregon, this 165-foot diameter circular area causes people to appear shorter or taller depending on where they stand. Balls appear to roll uphill, and brooms stand at impossible angles without falling over. First commercially opened in 1930, the site challenges conventional understanding of perception and gravity. What makes this site scientifically puzzling is the consistency of its effects across different weather conditions and times of day. Unlike many optical illusions that work from specific angles, the phenomena persist regardless of viewing position. Measurements show that a person walking through the vortex gradually changes height by up to 6 inches, with their apparent size shifting as they move across invisible boundaries within the circle. Scientists initially dismissed the vortex as simple optical illusion caused by a distorted visual background. However, when instruments were brought to the site, researchers discovered unexpected magnetic anomalies. Compasses work erratically within the vortex, sometimes spinning continuously. More sophisticated magnetometers detected unusual fluctuations in the local magnetic field strength that form a distinct pattern corresponding exactly with where the visual phenomena are strongest, suggesting an actual physical effect rather than mere illusion. Geologically, the Oregon Vortex sits at the intersection of 4 different rock types, creating what geologists call a lithologic contact zone. Below ground, surveys have revealed unusual density variations in the bedrock, creating a gravitational anomaly. While minor gravitational variations exist naturally across Earth's surface, the Oregon Vortex shows unusually sharp boundaries between areas of different gravitational pull, something that typically only occurs near massive ore deposits, which are absent at this location. Perhaps most mysterious is how the vortex affects different people differently. Individuals with inner ear disorders report feeling extreme disorientation, sometimes to the point of nausea, while those with certain neurological conditions and sometimes report feeling unusually centered and balanced within the vortex. This suggests the forces at work interact with human biology in ways that static optical illusions cannot, raising questions about perception that cross the boundaries between physics, neurology, and psychology. Native American tribes long avoided this area, calling it forbidden ground, and believing it to be a portal where different planes of existence overlapped. While modern science hasn't validated such claims, researchers acknowledge that the site represents a genuine anomaly warranting further study. The Oregon Vortex remains one of several documented mystery spots worldwide where similar effects occur, suggesting a natural phenomenon not yet fully understood, rather than a mere tourist trap. The Crooked Forest in Poland presents one of botany's most perplexing mysteries. Near the town of Gryfino stands a grove of about 400 pine trees, with an impossible feature. Each trunk grows normally from the ground, then makes a sharp 90-degree bend northward before curving back upward. The result looks like hundreds of letter J's planted in perfect rows, creating a scene that appears engineered rather than natural. What makes this forest scientifically baffling is the uniformity of the bends. All trees curve at the same height, about 3 feet from the ground, in the same direction, north, and at roughly the same angle. The pines were planted around 1930, and the curvature appeared when the trees were approximately 7 to 10 years old. Yet, despite the dramatic bends, the trees have grown to a healthy height of 50 feet, with the curved portions maintaining their unusual shape for over 80 years without straightening. Trees normally respond to damage or obstacles by growing around them, then returning to vertical growth once past the obstruction, a process called phototropism. However, in the crooked forest, the trees maintain their horizontal growth for about 3 to 9 feet before turning upward again. This extended horizontal growth pattern defies the natural tendency of trees to maximize light exposure by growing vertically, suggesting some external force overrode their biological programming for an extended period. The leading scientific theory suggests human intervention caused the curves, possibly by farmers who wanted to create naturally curved wood for furniture, boat building, or sleigh runners. However, this explanation raises more questions. Why would farmers create 400 trees when they would need far fewer? Why did they abandon the project, leaving the trees to grow for decades? And most puzzling, how did they create such perfectly uniform bends without damaging the trees, using techniques that modern botanists can't replicate? Alternative theories suggest natural causes like a heavy snowfall that bent the young trees, followed by an unusually long period before the snow melted. Yet, this doesn't explain why only these specific trees were affected when other pines in the region grew normally. Another hypothesis involves gravitational anomalies, but measurements show normal gravitational forces in the area. Some researchers have suggested unusual electromagnetic activity from a nearby power plant, but the plant was built decades after the trees were already curved. World War II destroyed most records from the region, leaving the true origin of the crooked forest undocumented. Local residents who might have known the answer have passed away, taking their knowledge with them. What remains is a living botanical anomaly. 400 trees that grew in a way trees shouldn't be able to grow, creating perfect curves that have survived decades without degradation or correction, standing as silent witnesses to a mystery that may never be solved. Kawah Ijen in Indonesia appears to defy the laws of nature with its electric blue flames that pour like liquid fire down the sides of the volcano at night. Unlike the typical orange-red of ordinary fire, these flames glow with an otherworldly cerulean light, so bright they're visible from space. The spectacle looks like something from an alien landscape rather than Earth. The scientific explanation behind the blue flames makes them no less impossible seeming. Deep within the volcano, sulfur-rich gases escape through cracks at high pressure and temperatures up to 600 degrees Celsius, 1,112 degrees Fahrenheit. When these gases reach the surface and contact oxygen, they ignite, burning with the characteristic blue flame. What makes this phenomenon rare is that these flames aren't brief flashes. They form rivers of blue fire that flow continuously down the mountainside, sometimes extending for over 5 kilometers. Kawah Ijen hosts another scientific anomaly, its acid crater lake, the largest in the world. With a pH of approximately 0.5, similar to battery acid, the turquoise water is strong enough to dissolve metal and human flesh. Despite this extreme acidity, which should render the lake sterile, researchers have discovered unique microorganisms thriving in these waters. These extremophiles possess biochemical adaptations never before documented, with cell membranes that remain intact in conditions that would immediately destroy normal cellular structures. The impossible nature of Kawah Ijen extends to human interaction as well. Local miners extract solid sulfur by inserting ceramic pipes into the volcano's vents, causing liquid sulfur to flow out and solidify. This work occurs in toxic conditions where gas masks are essential yet often unavailable. The miners carry up to 200 pounds of sulfur on their shoulders down treacherous paths, often making this journey twice daily. Medical science suggests such continuous exposure to sulfur dioxide should cause severe respiratory damage, yet many miners have worked these conditions for decades. What puzzles volcanologists is the stable, continuous nature of Aegean's blue flames. Most volcanic systems exhibit cyclical behavior with periods of activity followed by dormancy. Kawa Aegean, however, has maintained its blue flames with remarkable consistency for hundreds of years, according to historical records. This stability contradicts typical volcanic behavior patterns and suggests a unique subterranean structure that allows for constant gas release without building pressure toward eruption. The volcano creates its own weather system, generating localized acid rain that has created a barren landscape surrounding the crater. Despite this hostile environment, specialized plant species have evolved to tolerate soil acidity levels that should prevent any vegetation growth. These plants have developed unique molecular mechanisms to neutralize acid that enters their tissues, adaptations not seen elsewhere that offer insights into how life might exist in extreme environments on other planets. The world we live in constantly challenges what we believe is possible. From flames that burn blue to underwater artists creating perfect circles, these places show us that sometimes reality is stranger than fiction. Next time someone tells you something is impossible, remember the microbial life thriving in bloodfalls, or the pufferfish that creates underwater masterpieces without ever seeing its complete work. Our planet still holds mysteries that science is just beginning to understand. And there's one final question worth asking. What impossible places remain undiscovered, waiting just beyond the horizon of human exploration? If you enjoyed this video, click on the video shown on screen now to learn more Did You Know facts.